Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports Plus. We've got NFL Week 18 predictions and pick 'em. A lot of excitement, a lot of playoff implications, draft pick implications. We're going to talk about all of that and more in this video. So if you guys do enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content. You don't want to miss out on future NFL content, especially with the playoffs coming around. There's going to be a lot of great insight and analysis to be watched here on the channel. Awesome. Let's get into our pick 'em records. And as long as we're on the topic of playoffs and kind of mathematical eliminations, that's where I'm at here. Down 11 games. You guys have watched the struggle. I just want to point out, Austin, you're yet to hit triple digits in the loss mark this year. I've been there for a long time. 151, 103. I'm a disappointment. When I call my mom later, she's going to say, I saw your pick'em record, and then she's going to instantly hang up on me. So if you guys are going to be putting money down here, if you're betting money line, you got to ride with Austin because that guy knows what he's doing. I'm mathematically eliminated. Don't listen to Glasses guy. Austin, how does it feel? I'm going to crown you right now. How does it feel to be Pick'em champion 3 seasons in a row?
Well, the thing is, I would hope to win Pick'em. I would hope so. For as little as I know about the NBA, I should be able to do okay in Pick'em. So that's very interesting. We'll say that topic for another day.
Austin says that like I haven't been ducking him in NBA Pick'em for weeks now because I'm also afraid of losing in that too and then losing all of my credibility. Austin, let's jump into it now though. I don't want to have too much of a pity party for myself. And here we are, some Saturday football, and it's going to be a collection of fun games here. And this is a good one to start with, an AFC North rivalry game. Pittsburgh Steelers, Baltimore Ravens just feels right for a Week 18 game. And listen, the Ravens are so good. They locked up the #1 seed in the AFC, and despite that, you kind of easily could think, hey, maybe they're not going to roll out their starters. This week, I do think with some of the kind of implications behind Lamar Jackson, is he going to push for MVP? For me, I'm going to actually pick the Ravens. I think that they want to go out and shut down the hopes for the Pittsburgh Steelers to make the playoffs. They have not clinched a playoff spot yet. That interdivision rivalry here leads me to believe the Ravens are going to try and knock out the Steelers from the postseason and kind of take it a little personally. Austin, you're going with the other side of the coin here, picking Pittsburgh, and I think there's some good rationale there as well. Break down why you're going with the Steelers this week.
Yeah, I think when you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers here, this is an opportunity for them to catapult into the postseason with Mike Tomlin. I think that this is a realistic outcome. I think Baltimore might not be going full strength here. It's very tough in these, especially the last 2 weeks to fully diagnose who's playing and who's not, especially in the final week of the season. It's tough to know who's going to play, especially this early on in the week. But at the end of the day, Pittsburgh has more to play for. I think they're passionate. They're trying to get on the right path here, make it into the postseason, and upsetting Baltimore here would be huge for them. That's why I went with the Steelers.
For Pittsburgh to get into the playoffs, they do need some things to happen. They could definitely, of course, rely on getting a win. That's the first step that they need to have happen. But then off of that, also the matchup between the Texans and Colts that we'll talk about later is going to be important for them, as well as the matchup between the Bills and Dolphins. Those are really the big matchups to watch this week if you're a Steelers fan. Austin, let's jump into our next game now. As we look at that game I just talked about, Texans Colts. That's a huge matchup this week with a ton of implications, not only for a potential AFC South Division winner, which I'm skeptical of, but just in general, the AFC playoff race. You have these two teams who are kind of vying for maybe even a wild card spot if they don't actually win the division itself. And kind of the winner of this game knocks the other one out of postseason contention. With that being said, we're both going with the Texans, even though the Colts are at home. I think this is one of the toughest games to pick all week long, Austin. Why did you settle on Houston?
This is absolutely the toughest one in the entire Pick'em series so far in this week. I look at this from the standpoint of I'm going to take the better quarterback and what I believe is potentially the better football team. Indianapolis has been phenomenal so far this year. They've proven us wrong time and time again. I just think that the odds should actually really be in the Colts' favor here. Let's not forget, I think that was in week 2 that they had played each other. And the Colts were phenomenal in that one. It was like 28-10 as that concluding matchup. I think that the Houston Texans have an opportunity here. Obviously, they have some injuries, but the Colts have even more injuries at this point right now that they are currently dealing with on a week-to-week basis. I'm going to take a little bit healthier Texans team, and that is my pick.
Yeah, one thing I do have to touch on last year at the draft, the Texans traded their first round pick this year moving up to get Will Anderson. And immediately, I think, Austin, you and I were both kind of shocked, like, wow, holy cow, there's kind of a big risk there. They have a rookie QB. They're giving up their first round pick for the next draft. Look at how well it's worked out. The Texans have been great. Will Anderson's been very good for them. And honestly, it's just been great to see them turn it around. Because of that, I'm kind of riding with them here. Just a lot has gone right for them this season. I think this final week is going to be another example of that moving forward. Let's jump into our next game here. We move into the Sunday slate of action. And we've got some Ohio football here. The Cleveland Browns head into Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. The Browns have already clinched a playoff berth at 11-5, and the Bengals, unfortunately, just never really got healthy. Of course, lost Joe Burrow for a majority of the season. At 8-8, they're kind of playing for just the rights to be above 500 here. But I think just honestly, if we're looking at it, Cleveland looking at their playoff positioning, they're going to be a wild card team, but of course they want to have that 5 seed. That just gives you a pretty distinct advantage over being a 6 or 7 seed with the playoff format. So because of that, I think the Browns go out and try as hard as they can to get this win, lock themselves into the 5 spot right now. And I think that's going to be a really good end result for them. Austin, is that kind of the same reasoning way you went with the Browns, or is it more so about the actual matchup with Cincy being a little shorthanded and not just having, their usual cast of guys?
So I think it's very tough when you look at eliminated versus non-eliminated. Now, the fact of the matter is the Browns have a little bit more to play for, obviously, but we have to think from a player's perspective as well. These guys are trying to earn their next contract. So to say a team that's eliminated is not going to try is a complete line of BS, because that is not the truth. These guys are trying to play for next year, trying to showcase their film and, really present their best football on the table, which I think the Cincinnati Bengals are a good football team. I do. I think that the regression over the last couple of years has been tough to watch, but I still think they're a good football team. But at the end of the day, Cleveland has a little bit more to play for. While it might not be much, I still think it's enough to give them a competitive edge over the Bengals.
And they've just been great all year long as well, with a chance to move to 12-5, even with all of the injuries they sustained. It's been awesome to see, honestly. And Joe Flacco's been such a blessing for that franchise as well this year, which I don't think a couple of years ago any of us would have guessed would be the case here heading into 2024. Let's jump into our next game here of the week. And we've got a fun one. And this is actually a really important game as well. And you see, I've kind of switched up my pick this week. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading to Carolina to take on the Panthers. And now listen, let's talk draft implications here quickly, Austin. The Panthers have locked up the worst record in the NFL, which means their first round pick, which got traded to Chicago last year in the trade for Bryce Young, essentially, now belongs to the Chicago Bears, the first overall pick in 2024, along with DJ Moore, who had 1,300 receiving yards this year. How big of a trade was that for Chicago, Austin? And kind of what do you think about the Panthers' future, real quick?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit tough just considering all that had happened with the Panthers. But at the end of the day, they got their guy. They put a lot into him, and hopefully, you start to see some returns sooner rather than later, which you've seen some over the last couple of weeks. It's not exactly where you want to be, but at the end of the year, Trevor Lawrence struggled in his rookie year. There's a lot of quarterbacks that struggle in that first year, so it's not time to get completely down on Bryce Young just yet. So there is some reasons for optimism with Carolina. They have some areas that you can feel pretty strong about them moving forward. But in that same vein, they still were arguably the worst team in football on paper, film, record-wise. You've seen it all. They just weren't playing well. Tampa Bay's got, they have something to play for here. They have a division title to, try to obtain here. I think it's realistic for them. I think this is the exact matchup that they wanted to draw in that Week 18. Hopefully they can get the job done here. This is a feisty group, a fun team to watch. I think they're going to, put everything out there on the field. Hopefully this isn't a trap game where they feel like we're just going to walk all over the Panthers. That's not going to be the case. I think it's going to be a dogfight here.
Yeah, super important here for the Buccaneers. If they win this game, they're in the postseason, and they would actually host a home playoff game by winning the NFC South. So there's a lot on the line here, and I think that's one of the things for Carolina is if you're going into that locker room, like Austin, like you talked about, the guys in the final week of the season, they're playing for film, they're playing for their jobs, they're playing for every little bit of pride that they have left. And I think Carolina here, they could really rest their shoulders on, hey, we're going to try and knock Tampa Bay out of the playoffs. We haven't had a great season. Everything's been kind of poor for us this year. And I think that maybe they can end the year on a high note. I'm going with Carolina. I like this upset pick a lot. Now, listen, I picked Carolina a couple of times this year. Kind of come back to bite me a little bit. So this is why you ride with Austin in Pick'em, because I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just glasses guy over here. But let's jump into the next game now, Austin, as we look at a battle here between the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. And this is kind of a disappointing matchup here in Week 18. The two teams we kind of thought would be toward the top of the NFC North in the division this year. But of course, the Vikings have dealt with a ton of injuries. The Lions already have clinched a playoff spot, of course, beat the Vikings earlier this year when they clinched the NFC North. It's just been a great season for Detroit. They're the easy pick here. They're still playing with, kind of the past week of what happened in that Dallas Cowboys game. Right now, they're trying to battle and find a way to maybe move up to the 2 seed. They need a little bit of help to get there. It's a little complicated in any pathway for them to move up, but they're locked in as a top 3 seed in the NFC. You have to feel really good about where they're at with that regard. And honestly, they've just had a really fantastic season. It's hard for me to see them not winning, especially with how the Vikings have looked as late. Austin, is there any chance Minnesota wins this game?
After last week being so deflating, you'd hope that this defense would come out and be a lot more competitive than they were against Green Bay. That was an utter disgrace on national television, which the Vikings have actually, believe it or not, produced a few of those this year. When it comes to national TV and overall media narrative, have completely shifted on this organization, this roster, this team, which is not playing in the favor of them. However, they're underdogs heavily going into next year. Everyone's hyping up the Lions. Good formula for the Minnesota Vikings, hopefully moving forward. But at the end of the day, I think Detroit, they're a team that's tough. They want to stay sharp heading into the postseason. They're going to take care of business regardless, of true implications. I think they just get the job done here, tack on another win to Dan Campbell's resume, and they move on.
It is worth noting here at 7-9, the Vikings still are not eliminated from the playoffs technically, although they would need a ton to go right. Of course, a win this week. They would need New Orleans to lose. They would need Seattle to lose. They need Green Bay to lose. They need a lot of stuff to go wrong for some of these other teams to have a shot even at making the postseason. So it's really hard to bet on them getting in. And ultimately, we don't even think they beat Detroit to begin with. Let's jump forward now into our next battle here. And you look at the New York Jets. They head into New England and Austin. This is crazy here. Before the year, Austin was hyping up my New York Jets. Listen, I'm a diehard Jets fan, but this team's not been good. And Austin, before recording here, off air, he didn't want everyone to hear this, but he said, "There's no way I'm picking the Jets. This team's terrible." And I just wanted to make sure that was known in the recording here, Austin. You're picking the Patriots, the team that you thought, hey, there's a real chance they make the Super Bowl this year. Obviously, no Aaron Rodgers. Tough year for them, but looks like right now they have a good shot at having a top 8 pick in the 2024 NFL draft. Austin, why do you have the Patriots here knocking off the Jets in dramatic fashion?
Yeah, I think that this is one of those games where New England's just going to win just because. The Jets are a better football team on paper, but that has not proven them right for anything so far this year. Their offense has struggled mightily. There's a lot of question marks at the quarterback position moving forward, which has been heavily notated throughout the entire year. New England Patriots, they have a good defense. They have a good defense. They've played pretty well for the most part all season long. I expect that to keep up here. Going into Foxborough, if you're the Jets, is never an easy task, regardless of, who's that opposing quarterback on the sideline. It's just a tough place to play. Bill Belichick is very comfortable at home. But to me, I think the Patriots narrowly edge out the Jets here. I see this as a 3-point game.
That's the really crazy thing too about the Patriots here, Austin. Multiple times have we brought up, how good the Patriots historically are at Gillette Stadium. This year, I mean, they're just 1-7 at home. I think that's going to correct itself a bit this week as well. I see them getting a win, ending the year on a pretty good note for themselves. It's not been a good season for either of these franchises. And honestly, again, like you said earlier, picking this type of matchup in week 18 is pretty difficult to do. But I think Patriots here just at home, move to 2-7. It's a better pick. Now we've got a really important game, and this is one of the most important games of the entire week, because depending on what happens with that Tampa Bay Buccaneers game against Carolina, the Falcons and Saints have a real opportunity to move into the playoffs here. The winner of this game, in the situation that the Buccaneers lose, the winner of this game then moves into the 4 seed in the NFC by winning the NFC South. So Austin, in your rationale, you have the Saints. I have the Falcons here. For me, what I've maintained all year long is the Falcons are going to play right around 500 football. They're at 7-9. So by my math, they have to get a win here to move closer to 500. They're going to finish 8-9 on the season. I suspect they'll win this game. And it really comes down to, again, what happens with that Buccaneers game. But Austin, why do you like the Saints here at 8-8? And ultimately, do you see them having a shot to even maybe slip into the 7 spot where Green Bay currently sits for the wild card?
Now I'm gonna make a bold proclamation here before this game. I think the loser of this game, the head coach will be fired. I firmly believe that
Okay, I
regardless
like
of how
that.
you look. Yeah. I think Arthur Smith, a lot of people have some question marks about him as a coach at this point, which is a little perplexing to me considering the talent on the roster. I think he's done a pretty good job with what he's had to work with. When you look on the other sideline with Dennis Allen, I've always had question marks about him as a head coach, regardless of once again who's on roster. I don't love him as a head coach. This is the last hurrah for the Saints. This is the last hurrah for Mickey Loomis as general manager, a team that's heading into the offseason with $89 million negative going into this upcoming offseason. This has been a combination of restructuring contracts and just giving out contracts that are undeserving and just kicking the can. And that's what's culminated here the last 5 years of doing so. A negative $89 million heading into the offseason. It's a must win for them. It's a lot of pressure on Derek Carr. It's a lot of pressure on the organization from top down. There's a stupid amount of pressure. Maybe that's why it makes sense to actually pick the Falcons here, but I'm rocking with the Saints.
This is going to be one of those matchups that honestly, like 3, 4 years from now, we look back at as like a wow, this was a huge kind of changing of the guard situation, almost to say, for one of these franchises because of all the possible long-term implications from not only, like you said, the coaches possibly getting fired, but who knows what happens with the quarterback situation for both of these teams moving forward. There's really a lot riding on this game, not only in terms of the playoff implications or the draft pick implications this year, but those long-term 4 or 5 years from now, we look back at and say, wow, look at that game and what happened to that. Let's jump forward now to our next game of the week. And well, Austin, you didn't even have to ask me for pick 'em this week, who I was picking here. Jaguars, Titans. You guys know I'm riding with the team that I picked before the year to win the AFC South. It wasn't a hard pick, okay? The Jaguars won the AFC South last year. They're the best team in the AFC South. No offense to any Colts or Texans fans. Like, you guys have had fun, cute seasons. But I would say the Jaguars have been kind of disappointing this year at 9-7. Now, I have to be careful saying that because Austin's going to go back and clip this off. I'm almost certain of it. But like, they haven't played their best football. And I really do think that like they're still going to make the playoffs. They're going to have a home playoff game in the first week of wildcard football. And then from there, I think they're one of the most dangerous teams in the NFL because they have a generational quarterback. They have a really good running back. They've got talented wide receivers. They've got one of the best tight ends in football. Yes, I said it. And they've got, I think, a trustworthy pass rush that I'm going to rely on getting there. So watch out for the Jaguars. That's all I got to say. When it comes to the playoffs, they're going to be there, first of all. Austin's picking them too, which means he's in agreement with me on that. And then secondly, they're going to be a real thorn in the side. Baltimore, watch out. Watch out, Baltimore. They're coming for you. Austin, what do you got here on the Jags?
Yeah, well now the glazing stopped. I'm not in on how deep you are with the Jags here. I think this is a one and done in the postseason. I think they win this game, they win the division, but at the end of the day, they are going to probably get swept up in that, wild card round. I don't trust the team. I don't. After what I've seen this year, I can't trust the defense. Offensively, I can't trust them. The best tight end in football. I mean, dude, we gotta chill with the Jags. Not surprising that at this point in the season, a 9-7 team you would figure to be a Super Bowl favorite in your mind. But that's the delusion with you in Pick'em. That's your worst toxic trait when it comes to Pick'em.
The one thing that I know, like someone call Brandon Staley right now and ask him about the Jaguars in the wild card round. If you wanna mess around and find out, he's the guy to ask. Jaguars are going all the way this year. Let's jump into the next game here as we look at the Cardinals and Seahawks. And this is a really important game for Seattle. Just looking at the NFC currently, Seattle right now would be technically slated behind Green Bay. They currently hold the 8th spot, and remember, 7 teams make the playoffs, so they need to win this week. They need to win in a big way, and I think they're going to come out and get it against a team that they're just significantly better than. The Cardinals have 4 wins on the year. We knew it was going to be a big step back season for them. Just kind of trying to retool and build around a brand new coaching staff. And Kyler Murray missed most of the early part of the year. It's just going to be a tough season for the Cardinals. It has been for them. I think that they're still trending toward the way that they'd want to be going in terms of their long-term assets and building up some of their pieces. But the reality here is Seattle's much better than them. Seattle gets the win. They need the win this week. I think that they're going to be very well prepared for it. They've got the assets and the players to get the job done this week. And that's exactly what I expect to see from them. Austin, what do you like for Seattle specifically in this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, coming off of two completely different weeks for each of these teams, Arizona surprised a lot of people. But at the end of the day, I think Seattle's the better football team. They're the better team just through and through. They have the assets to be able to, make a push into the postseason. It's a crucial game for them. It's a crucial game for Geno Smith. Everybody has to be locked in and dialed into this one. Arizona, they're going to play. They might play spoiler. I don't really know. Considering how they played last week, I was impressed with their perseverance and their ability to convert on key third downs. I still think Seattle's going to get the job done. They're playing for a lot at this point in time. I think this should be a victory for the Seahawks.
Let's jump into our next game here this week. And this one, again, I keep saying it for a lot of the games, but that's how beautiful week 18 can be. A lot of implications here in this one as well for a few different reasons. First of all, let's touch on the Bears. 7-9, they're completely eliminated from the playoffs. But in the event that they lose and a team like the New York Jets wins, the Bears could potentially be looking at 2 top 8 picks in this year's draft. There's a lot of implications with that regard. They're currently probably locked into 2 top 10 picks unless they win. If they win this week, then their pick likely falls outside of the top 10, but they'd still have the number 1 overall pick to work with, and a lot of long-term flexibility. Of course, the question of who's the long-term quarterback, is it Caleb Williams or is it Justin Fields? They have questions to be answered. But I think the first thing here that we have to talk about before we get to some of those QB concerns for Chicago is Green Bay. Look, with how poorly they started the year, a lot of questions about, oh my gosh, what are they going to be post Aaron Rodgers? There's a real chance that they're actually playing in the postseason this year, and they're kind of in the driver's seat. A win, and they're essentially in. There's a lot of things that would have to go wrong for them to fall out. If they win, they control some of their own destiny here. And I think, Austin, if they come into this game and take down the Chicago Bears, it's tough. It's a divisional matchup. But at home, this is a game you expect the Packers to win. How comfortable and how confident are you in them?
I think after watching last week against Minnesota, they're going to provide a lot of challenges for the Chicago Bears, especially through the year. Jordan Love is completely locked in, and I think this is a great opportunity for him to showcase once again, potentially that he can be their franchise quarterback. Chicago, obviously Justin Fields is playing to be that guy for them moving forward. There's a lot of Chicago fans that have quickly they've changed their heart in terms of how they feel about him. But at the end of the day, the Packers are the better football team. They're playing at home late in the year. This is a perfect formula for the Packers to get a victory over the Bears. This has been a common theme here, and I think that continues.
If you want to see more about that quarterback controversy, will the Bears draft one? Will they not? Make sure to go check out some of Austin's mock drafts on the channel. He spends a ton of time watching some of these college prospects, making sure that he's able to accurately define their games and mock good places for them in the draft. So make sure to go check that out after this video. Let's jump into our next game here now, Austin, as we look at a matchup here between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers in a Week 18 matchup here. Reminds me of a few seasons ago, Mike Williams catch back of the end zone. One of those, really memorable regular season moments as the Chargers pushed for a playoff spot back then. Obviously, kind of a different circumstance here now. Chargers completely eliminated 5-11. Brandon Staley fired the whole team. Just kind of disappointing this season, if we're going to be completely honest. And the Chiefs, well, they've been good, but they're still disappointing to their standards. At 10-6, the Chiefs here have a pretty good chance to kind of cement themselves into a top spot in the AFC. And I think it is really important just noting that if they did lose this week, it would open the door a little bit to, say, Jacksonville to potentially move up to the 3 spot in the AFC when it comes to the playoff race. Austin, first of all, how concerned are you about Kansas City? And then why do you have them winning this game against the Chargers?
I think when you consider the Kansas City Chiefs, this is a team that just has not seen this amount of struggles basically since Patrick Mahomes first came into the league. Now, this can be attributed to a lot of different things. A lot of people are very quick to point to the receiver position, which is completely warranted, but they have to run the football a little bit more effectively. And, defensively, they've been up and down this year, but for the most part, they've been a top 10 level defense. Now, which really begs the question on what has to happen here moving forward. I just think one of these receivers has to step up, or maybe somebody else has to come into the fold and get some more targets. But it's just there's not a lot to pick up from here. And you're just going to have to rely actually on Kadarius Toney to figure it out. He's the most dynamic playmaker that they have that has to make some more plays. Rashid Rice has been super critical over the last couple of weeks, but I think Kadarius Toney is the true X factor for them moving forward and can really kick this into gear. As much as people want to clown me for saying that, he's the most talented receiver that remains outside of Rashid Rice.
Yeah, Kadarius Toney on the back end here of New Year's Eve, he might be right in his element as the ball dropped just recently. So we'll see how he plays in Week 18 here and how he plays going into the postseason because the Chiefs are going to need him to step up big time. Let's go into our next game here as we look at a battle between the Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders. And we've said the word disappointment a couple of times in this video, and I think these two franchises are really good examples of disappointing not only seasons but kind of past couple of years. The Raiders, the whole McDaniels hire obviously didn't work out. Now you have an interim coach still fighting to maybe win the job over. A win here for the Raiders would move them to 8-9. You would have to say, hey, Antonio Pierce has done a pretty good job with the team if they end up getting there. And the Broncos still looking to get to a winning record despite being eliminated from the playoffs. They have a shot to get to 9-8 here. I think you would classify that as a pretty big success for Sean Payton, especially with how the beginning of the season went for the Broncos. Austin, you went with the Raiders, as did I. I think being at home here gives them a slight advantage in this game that I'm kind of riding with. What do you think about these two teams generically, and then kind of just into this matchup just a little bit?
Yeah, Denver's been up and down this year because they were atrocious to begin the season. They actually recovered nicely. A lot of people were having a lot of fun with Pick'em with them, starting to turn the corner. But I think the critical part in this is Antonio Pierce fighting for his job. These players play hard for him. Think about when Bisaccia just a couple of years ago here was, trying to stay the head coach of this football team. They tried super hard the last 3 weeks of the season for him to bid for that spot. Obviously, did not get the position. I think that's going to be the same case here for the Raiders. They love how he plays. He embodies the Raider way, and I think that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to show out for him, and it should be an interesting game.
Yeah, we'll have to see if the Raiders actually award their interim coach this time around. Of course, famously did not do that even after making the playoffs that year with Bisaccia, like you brought up, Austin. So a lot riding on this week for both sides here. The Broncos kind of playing for bragging rights a little bit, and the Raiders here, some guys in that organization fighting for their job. Let's go now into our next game here this week, and another pivotal game. Honestly, just a lot of interesting matchups as the Eagles take on the Giants here, and the Eagles are looking at a spot right now where at 11-5 they've honestly been disappointing, which kind of is a testament to how talented this team is. That at 11-5 to title that disappointing just shows how good they are, honestly. But just last couple of weeks, I mean, they've dropped some games that they shouldn't, and you look at them and say there's a little bit left here to be desired. And I think the Eagles, this is an important game for them. Because of kind of the positioning with Dallas. If the Cowboys were to technically lose and the Eagles win, then the Eagles would move all the way up to the 2 seed potentially in the NFC. So there's a lot riding on this game for their own playoff positioning, but also just finding some rhythm, finding some a little bit of routine coming into this week as well in terms of the way that they want to play and how consistently they want to play. I think this is a good get right game for them before the playoffs. Austin, do you look at it the same way?
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. A get right game for them. I think this is pretty critical. I absolutely do because when you look at how last week played out for them, I guess you would call that a disastrous loss, which should have been a for sure lock against Arizona. Now, once again, this should be a win, but at the end of the day, I think that the Eagles actually played down to some of their opponents, and we've been super high on the Eagles all year. At some points, I think we were stupid high on them, which I don't regret. I still don't regret it. I think this is a phenomenal football team, but there's some glaring issues in that secondary that got to get cleaned up. They've taken a step back defensively in that regard. Hopefully they can, figure things out right before the postseason because a lot of times, teams peak too early, and I think that might have been Philadelphia this year.
Yeah, I think they're such an interesting team to talk about because they still are tied for the third best record in the NFL. Like, it's just there's so much talent there that you just want to see them dominate games, and they just haven't really done that truly this season to the level that you would hope to see them do so. But I still think that once we get to the playoffs and you wipe the slate clean, you erase all the records, there's not a lot of teams saying, yeah, we'd love to face the Eagles this week. And I think that's going to be an important thing to note as we go into pick 'em for the postseason after the regular season is over. Let's jump now into our next game here. And this is a game where two teams already have locked up playoff positioning. The Rams at 9-7, they have clinched a playoff spot. So kudos to them. Before the year, Austin, you and I both were looking at them as a team that could take another step back forward after a really disappointing year last year. So kudos to us for believing in the Rams a bit there, as you know, obviously a couple breakouts and having a healthy quarterback situation definitely has gone a long way in reshaping what the team looked like this season. And then the 49ers. I mean, ever since trading for Christian McCaffrey, this team has just been phenomenal. The Niners are one of the best teams in the entire NFL. Of course, no surprise there. They've locked up the number one seed in the NFC. They're going to likely be resting guys for week 18. I believe reports right now are saying that Christian McCaffrey likely does not play. It's hard to, again, we're recording this on Monday night, so there's a lot of possibilities of guys getting scratched for some of these games. Maybe the Niners have some more guys X'd out. And because of that, we're going with the Rams here, who I think looking to move to 10-7 just gives them a little bit of a stronger record appearance. Honestly, these two teams with them already clinching playoff spots. The Rams have no shot at winning the division. The Niners already clinched the one seed. There's not really a lot to play for here, Austin, besides maybe pride in your own individual player resumes. What are you kind of looking to see in this game, I guess?
Yeah, it's kind of tough because this one doesn't do a whole lot in terms of moving the needle for positioning, seating, stuff like that. The Rams have more to play for in that regard. And the 49ers just want to stay healthy heading into the postseason. It's a tough game. We're not going to spend a ton of time on it, but at the end of the day, I think the Rams, have a little bit of an opportunity to move up seating wise. That's why they should have the edge here. I think they're going to probably play most of their guys, but once again, we've been wrong, but before in that regard. Early reports have not come out about that as the current moment, but who knows? A lot of things can change throughout the week. So if you're a pick'em person and you're trying to actually make your picks, let's check the latest news on the statuses of those players.
Doesn't everyone love week 18? Let's get into the next one here, Austin, as we see a battle between the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington Commanders. And if the Cowboys win this game, if they win their matchup against Washington, they win the NFC East and they would lock themselves up as the 2 seed in the NFC. So kind of a lot riding here on this game for Dallas. Honestly, you don't want to move down in the standings, especially down to where potentially Philly would be as kind of the 5 seed. Because if you lose and Philly wins, then all of a sudden you guys flip spots and you have a road playoff game instead of a home playoff game. So there is a lot riding on this game. This is a must win for the Cowboys. And I think that they win this very comfortably against the only team in the NFL really actively tanking in the Washington Commanders, who have lost 7 straight games, which is the most in the entire NFL currently. And they've just honestly been terrible. Since making a bunch of trades around the trade deadline. They're just not a very good football team. Very pointedly, they're in a position here to pick in the top 2 or 3 picks in the draft for a reason. So Washington's been very disappointing. If Dallas loses this game somehow, that's an absolute nightmare for them. But I think, Austin, if I set the line at like 10.5 points, would you hit the over or the under on that?
I'm going to take the over. I think the Cowboys are going to take care of business and they're going to do it well. And I think this should be honestly, a 17-point game. I firmly believe that Washington has not looked good in any of their games. Not a lot to talk about for them moving forward, other than the fact that they're, actively tanking. So this one, Dallas should have, kind of wrapped up.
With that in mind, let's jump to our next one here. And we got a good game here on Sunday night and a really pivotal game when we talk about the AFC East. The Dolphins have locked up a playoff spot. The Bills have not at 10-6. If they lose this game, there's a potential pathway where one of Indianapolis or Houston catches them, and then also Pittsburgh has a chance to catch them as well, with all 3 of those teams being at 9-7. This is a really important game for Buffalo because if they lose, they might even miss the postseason, and Miami has a good shot here to lock up the AFC East. If they win, they lock up the AFC East. That's what I'm betting on. Austin, you're going with the Bills, though, who are playing for their playoff lives. What do you see about this matchup that you like for them?
Yeah, I think Buffalo has, definitely progressed throughout the course of the season. A lot of people were low on them, rightfully so. They've been able to find their footing here, but this is a really tough test. I think a divisional matchup, having to go and play on the road, it's not going to be insane conditions to have to play in, but at the end of the day, it's a tough, gritty win that they're going to have to be able to do. They need to cover these receivers. There's just so much speed on Miami. Buffalo is going to have to do a great job containing the big play, which is always the major theme when going up against the Miami Dolphins. But I think at the end of the day, though, Miami is also susceptible to Josh Allen making some tremendous plays with his legs, which they could not contain the Ravens offense on the ground at all. That's going to be a major issue for them. Last week was just insane to watch because they were moving it through the air on the ground. on Miami. So very impressive win by the Ravens last week. But yeah, a huge disappointment for the Dolphins. Hopefully it's not 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, this is again a really pivotal matchup. This is a huge win by the schedule makers here, giving us an awesome Week 18 Sunday Night Football game, divisional matchup, playoff implications in line. Great football this week. We're super excited for it. I hope you guys are as well. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Give Austin some support down in the comment section. Congratulate him on winning Pick'em for the third straight year. I don't know how he does it. It's not hard, I guess, playing against me. So kind of props to him. Kind of, kick me down while I'm down already because I'm not good at this, but that's okay. Make sure to leave a like, guys, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports Plus video.